Hi everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this brand new motherboard from MSI. This is the MSI Z87 MPower Max. Let's start off with a closer look at the retail box. This is a Z87 motherboard, so it's designed for Intel's 4th generation core processors, aka Haswell, and it's also got the 1150 socket, so it's a new socket. Bear in mind it's not backwards compatible with 1155 CPUs. But here inside we have a look at the enhanced components that MSI is using. You have military class 4 spec components, so you have high C caps for high thermal stability, dark caps which have a low electrostatic resistance, super ferrite core chokes. You also have overclocked PCB designed for overclocking, so 50% more layers than your average PCB, optimized for OC features. Below that we have enhanced thermals, so this is making your system cool and stable for overclocking. So you have sort of a uniquely designed heatsink, the M design. It's got a super pipe, an 8mm actual heat pipe in there. Also a large clear space around the CPU for your cooler. And then total fan control, you get all 4-pin smart fan connectors on the motherboard. And then you can set that up within the UEFI or using the Windows software that MSI also provides. Over here we have Overclocking Essentials. So these are features to make your overclocking easier. So you have stuff like an external clear CMOS button to reset to your factory defaults. Easy button 3, so this is, you can use, actually these are just surface mounted power and reset buttons. Also direct overclocking buttons, the plus and minus buttons there will automatically adjust the CPU BCLK or base clock. You also have a debug LED and you have voltage checkpoints also integrated on the board. Enhanced power up here, MSI has gone with all digital power delivery for the CPU as well as the memory and the iGPU. You also have dual 8-pin connectors on the motherboard for adding extra power delivery to the CPU. An enhanced BIOS down here, and this is indicating that you have special features within the BIOS. You can actually use the debug LED to help troubleshoot if you're getting your system up and running for the first time. You get 2 BIOSes, UEFIs, however that is pronounced in plural, so you can switch and you can recover from the crash BIOS. Also the go-to BIOS button will allow you to go straight from the BIOS with the restart, which makes that much easier than spamming the delete button. And you get click BIOS 4, which means you actually get a graphical layout within the BIOS, and you can use your mouse in there to navigate around and click on things. Finally, here on the back, some more of the specs as well as some logo indicators for what's inside the box. I'm not going to go over all these individually. They're all listed out here as well as on the product page if you want a closer look. I'm going to go ahead and take a look inside at the accessories. Inside the box, we have 2 sub-boxes. All right, so one with the motherboard right there. We're going to finish with a close look at that. In this accessory box, we have lots of documentation and accessories. This is your Intel 8 series platform overclocking guide. Some different stuff going on with the 8 series and with your Haswell processors. Some important things to note if you're going from a Sli Bridge or an Ivy Bridge processor over to Haswell. So there's some useful information in there to get your overclocking on. What else do we have in here? Oh, we have a little riser card. So this is a Wi-Fi card. It's actually dual 802.11n connectors on there, so 300 megabit Wi-Fi. It's on a little riser, so it doesn't actually use up a PCI slot. And I'll be actually coming back to this a little bit more because it also enables stuff. We got Bluetooth 4.0. It also has WiDi. Here are your serial ATA connectors. I think there should be some more. Yes, some more right there. So total of 6 serial ATA connectors. They're all going to be compatible with SATA revision 1, 2, or 3, so up to 6 gigabits per second. And all of them are going to have a 90-degree angled bracket on one end and a straight plug on the other. And they all have the little clasps to help hold them in place. You have an SLI bridge right there. Let's see, are there any other SLI bridges? Not that I'm seeing. All right, so MSI labeled SLI bridge. It's one of the flexible ones, so depending on the spacing of it, chances are it'll be a triple slot spacing based on the layout of the motherboard. So you can have that plugged in and good to go. I also like that it's black. You get the MSI M connector, so you can use that to plug your front panel leads from your case into and then plug the whole block into your motherboard. That kind of simplifies that process. You also get some voltage leads right here. Since there are voltage read points on the board, you can plug these in to give yourself a little connector to connect to your multimeter so you can get the proper readings. Some extra documentation there about the Wi-Fi Bluetooth module as well as a screw to hold it in place. Here is your input-output shield. Let me go ahead and remove this from the plasticky packaging so you get a better look. All right, so you have black and yellow, which is kind of a color theme of this motherboard, in case you didn't realize. Text on there to indicate which port is which. And there's your I/O shield. All right. Moving right along, here's a set of documentation. You get an MSI G-Series case badge, quite a sizable one. 2 sets of drivers and software. So this is actually going to be your driver disk, so you can use that. Oh wait, no, this is a driver's disk. No. All right, this is for the LAN. The black disk here is for your LAN, your Wi-Fi, drivers and utilities disk right there. This one is your main motherboard driver disk. It's recommended to download the latest drivers from the MSI website rather than using this, but I find it's also still handy to have on hand, particularly to load your LAN driver, because you can't download updated drivers unless you can connect to the internet. All right. In here, a little bonus add-on item in case your case does not have a lot of USB 3.0 on the front panel. They're providing you with a rear panel PCI bracket version, and then this one connects to the 20-pin internal USB 3.0 header. I also have this set of equipment here, and this is actually another rear panel PCI bracket. It actually gives you a Molex plug and a couple SATA connectors at the back. You can essentially use this to plug in some external hard drives by wiring and connecting these up to your motherboard and your power supply, so that's some more added functionality. I should continue along with my manuals and stuff, but I guess I'll finish the accessories first. Lots of accessories with this particular motherboard. This is the rest of the componentry for that Wi-Fi card that I showed you guys. So, a little info about the antenna. 2 antennae themselves individually, so you can position them where you like. You can angle the antenna to best suit your needs and give yourself the best wireless connection to your home router. And then, of course, the little contact points right there that connect to the Wi-Fi card itself. Moving right along for documentation, a quick installation guide. This is more of a generic guide from MSI. You can also check out our How to Build a Computer video on Newegg TV. Software and application user guide, so this is more specific to the actual software that comes along with the hardware. So for instance, Command Center software, so you can use this to do in-OS overclocking and configuration. Here's your actual motherboard manual right here, and this, for instance, has useful stuff. If I can find the right page, which is totally right there. Okay, so this is like the full list of all the componentry that's installed onto the motherboard and what different types of items are there. Also sort of a layout of the motherboard itself. So definitely keep this on hand. It's very helpful to have during your build. And then finally, you have a little door hanger here. So busy breaking world records, out buying LN2. I think that's kind of funny. Okay, on to the motherboard. And now for a close-up look at the Z87 MPower Max. As you can see, MSI has gone with a black and yellow color scheme for this motherboard. So you'll notice mostly black connectors throughout, then some yellow accenting on these uniquely designed MPower Max heat sinks. So you got a pretty massive one here over your VRM and power delivery for your CPU, as well as another one down here for the Z87 chipset. I also wanted to quickly flip around to the back just so you guys can get a closer, better look at the PCB. As you can tell, it's pretty much flat black, and then as you can see, you have Phillips head spring-loaded screws mounting pretty much all of the heat sinks on the board, so if you ever do need to remove those in the future, should make it fairly easy to do so. I also wanted to point out the fan headers. You get a total of 5. They're all 4-pin PWM capable fan headers. So CPU fan 1 and 2 are right up here at the top, just above and to the right of the CPU. System fan header 1 is on the top right here, just above the main motherboard power connector. And then the other 2 system fan connectors are down here right at the bottom. And since we're down here in this area, let's go ahead and get our close-up look at this motherboard going. So starting in the very bottom right, first off, we have a debug LED, so that's going to show post codes as your system is booting, especially if you have any issues getting your system up and running the first time. It's extremely helpful to have that, so you can tell specifically whether it might be a memory issue or might be a GPU issue, something like that. This is also the go-to BIOS button right there, so you can push that button and that will automatically boot you into the BIOS the next time you restart the system, which is also very helpful because these motherboards tend to boot up very quickly these days, especially if you're using Windows 8. Next to that, you have your 2 front panel connectors. Use those with the included M connectors, and that will allow you to connect those up a little bit more easily. Above that, you actually have your 2 BIOS chips and the BIOS switch button, so you can switch over to the BIOS, to the backup BIOS, just with the flip of a switch right there. Also notice you have a couple USB 2.0 connectors right there. Those are each going to be able to support 2 USB ports if you have them on the front panel of your case, for example. And note that the red one here is going to provide additional power to your charging devices or devices that need to be charged to charge them more quickly, which is always nice. Okay, so let me make sure I have this propped up. Next to that, the 2 aforementioned system fan headers. And then you have your overclocking area right here. So you'll notice the OC Genie button, that's your easy one-button push overclock. You also have a couple different modes for that, so you have a switch next to it to adjust those. Plus and minus buttons are going to increase or decrease the BCLK or base clock value for your CPU overclock. Also, you have surface mounted power and reset buttons, so particularly if you're doing outside the box build, those are extremely helpful. Also, you have an audio connector right there, JAUD1. So for front panel HD audio, you can connect that up for your mic and headphone. You also notice here you have a little, this is actually the PCB, the different layers, you can kind of see through it. So that kind of shows you a little bit more about the way the PCB is actually constructed. Then you might notice a light colored strip going right kind of through here. That's actually sort of separating some of the audio components from the rest of the components on the motherboard to prevent any, for example, anything from bleeding over into the audio to affect your audio experience. You also notice your audio boost. This is actually providing some electromagnetic shielding from or on top of your audio chipset. That's a Realtek ALC 1150 codec supported chipset, and the rest of your audio componentry right there. Moving right along, we have our PCI Express slots. So you'll notice plenty of those. You have some short ones like these. Those are X1. So you have a total of 1, 2, 3, and 4 of those. And then you'll notice you have 3 longer PCI Express. These are X16. So 3 of those total, top, middle, and bottom. Now bear in mind your Intel 4th generation core processor, aka Haswell, has 16 PCI Express Gen 3 lanes natively, and those are going to be piped to these longer ports. So you should bear in mind if you're connecting a GPU, for example, to the top port, that'll run at X16. If you have a device plugged into the top and the middle, those will run at X8 and X8, and that will give you, for instance, support for 2-way SLI if you're running NVIDIA graphics cards. If you do happen to be going with an AMD solution, you can actually do 3-way Crossfire X using the top, middle, and bottom one. If you do have 3 cards plugged in, or 3 of any card, it doesn't matter if it's a GPU or not, they're going to run at X8, X4, and X4. So that's kind of how those work. Also, right here in the center, you'll notice a little mSATA port right there. So you can actually take an mSATA SSD, lay it down right there, give yourself some onboard storage. So great solution if you want to have a permanent boot drive set up right there, for example. And it is going to be SATA revision 3 compatible, so you can get up to your 6 gigabits per second throughput. To the right of that, you'll notice the MSI logoed Z87 Chipset Heatsink, so yellow and black again for that one. And the Z87 chipset's going to be controlling quite a few different things, but a lot of talk goes into the Pch Peripheral Controller Hub. So you'll notice the red sticker up there. That's actually indicating that these 6 ports on the right are going to be your native SATA Revision 3 connectors that are supported by the chipset. MSI has actually gone ahead and added on a couple more for you. So you have 2 here on the left side. These are actually going to be controlled by an ASMedia ASM1061 chipset. Still SATA Rev 3, still 6 gigabits per second. Your other 6 here are all controlled natively by Z87. These are going to be your fastest ones, so a boot drive or a boot SSD, definitely going to want to connect to one of these ports. And then you also have RAID support for RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 10. So tons of SATA Rev 3 connectivity, which is pretty awesome. Also right next to that, you have your USB 3.0 header, the 20 pin, so you can use that with the included bracket that I showed you guys. Or if you have a case that has that natively, just plug it in right there. And I like that it's a 90-degree angled one. That kind of gives you a bit more flexibility with your cable management. I like it. Hey, there's another one right there. All right, so right above the 90-degree right angle one, you have another USB 3.0 header on the board. So use that with the rear panel on your bracket or anything like that. 2 of those available. Okay, above that is your 24-pin main motherboard power connector, so make sure you plug that in. That's from your power supply. And then above that, you'll notice this little bank, and these are actually your voltage read points. So you saw those little leads that I showed you guys in the baggie that was included. You simply plug those in right there, connect that up to your multimeter, and you can get some really detailed voltage readings. To the left of that, you have your DDR3 DIMM slots. So these are the long slots, top to bottom, and you can actually have pretty much the similar functionality if you guys are familiar with Ivy Bridge or Sandy Bridge. You have dual channel memory support. You simply pop in the memory like so. Make sure you buy it in sets of 2 because you're going to want to take advantage of that dual channel mode. And then you actually have support for DIMM capacities up to 8 gigabytes per DIMM. So that would give you 32 gigs total if you populated all 4 of those with 8 gig DIMMs. For speeds, you can do officially supported by Intel up to 1600 speed, and then you can actually do overclock speeds up to 3000, which is pretty fast. That's going to be greatly dependent on your actual processor because processors vary, and you won't always have support for all of those overclock speeds. But again, that's an overclocking thing, and your mileage may vary. Right here at the center, you have your 1150 socket. Once again, I must reiterate, this is a different and a new socket, not compatible with 1155. So if you have a Sandy Bridge or an Ivy Bridge, a 2nd or 3rd gen Intel Core processor, don't try to put it in right here. You need a 4th generation Intel Core processor, aka Haswell, and that will slot in right there. And that's got some pretty cool features with it, also some great overclocking potential, as well as an actual IVR. Your voltage regulation is handled by the processor these days. So your voltage is up here, but the processor is actually going to be calling it in when necessary, so to speak. You also, of course, have this massive heatsink, kind of got the M shape to it, if you kind of flip it that way. There, see, M shape to the heatsink, going around providing heat dissipation for your power delivery components, and then you'll notice all the power phases right in here. This is definitely an overclocking centric motherboard. You have super ferrite chokes in there, as well as all the military class 4 spec componentry. And you'll notice you also have an 8mm heat pipe that's going sort of a full loop around this heatsink. That's just going to make sure that all of your power delivery stays as cool as it can, especially if you're getting into overclocking. One last thing up here, also mentioned in the manual and on the box, right here, 2 supplemental 8-pin CPU power connectors. So you can usually run with just one of those plugged in if you're not doing serious overclocking, but if you are going to be doing some crazy overclocking with this board, which it is designed for, I would recommend getting a higher quality power supply so you can plug in both of those. Finishing off with the motherboard I/O. So over here on the left side, we have a combo PS2 port, so that will support mouse or keyboard, and especially if you have, say, an older mechanical keyboard that supports N key rollover, very nice to still have that there. Also a couple standard USB 2.0 ports below that, so if you're having any issues getting keyboard commands to register in the UEFI, for example, I recommend going with these ports right here. You also have that externally available clear CMOS button. And then this is actually the Wi-Fi module that I showed you guys in the accessories. I've installed it here, but I've also partially disassembled it. So bear in mind it's not quite as flimsy as you're seeing here. But I did want to show that it plugs in right there to give you access to the antenna connectors at the back. And then also if you want to take it apart like I have just done, you can see cool things. So this is an actual Intel Wi-Fi module, 802.11bgn. And you can actually see right there, this is a high-quality Intel Centrino. That's a wireless N2230. And since you have an Intel wireless card, and since you're going to be using an Intel processor in this actual motherboard, that means you have WiDi capabilities. So if you have a WiDi receiver, a WiDi capable display, you can do wireless display from this and connect up to your monitor, and it's pretty cool. I've played with WiDi a little bit myself. It is pretty fascinating technology. Wireless display. Okay, aside from that, you also have USB 3.0, so you'll notice 4 USB 3.0 ports right there. Those are actually supported by an add-on ASMedia, actually an ASM 1074 chipset, so that's right here, and that's controlling those. You also notice your RJ45 port right here. That's powered by a killer E2205 gigabit NIC. So that also gives you access to the killer features. Supports stuff like packet prioritization, so you can make sure that if you're gaming and you're doing something else on the net in the background, like downloading, you will have prioritization for your gaming packets and you won't have lag. You also have an optical toslink connector right there for your audio, and then you have 3, let me pull these off real quick, display outs. Now these display outs are going to be for the integrated GPU that's part of your processor. You have 3 of them, and you can actually support with the newest Intel HD graphics. You can support triple displays, so you can actually do 3 monitors out of without even having a discrete graphics card connected. But you'll notice 2 HDMI as well as a full-size DisplayPort. A couple more USB 2.0 ports here. Those are supported by the Intel Z87 chipset, so native, and those are going to be nice and fast. And then lastly, you have your analog outputs as well as your mic input, again for your Realtek ALC 1150 codec audio chip. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been our unboxing and overview of the MSI Z87 MPower Max motherboard featuring the Z87 chipset as well as the 1150 socket for Intel's 4th generation core processors. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our Newegg TV YouTube channel, and we'll see you all in the next video.